Really looking forward to this fight at featherweight. We have the Maritimes' own Gavin Guv'nor Tucker taking on Billy Quarantillo coming out of Tampa Bay. And Matt, for Tampa's own, happy birthday, Billy Quarantillo. Turns 32 this week on December the 8th. And Matt, this is a fight where you kind of look at both these guys as possibly prospects. I know Billy Quarantillo had a shot on The Ultimate Fighter Season 22, the season where Artem Lobov was a creeper on the pool. And for Gavin Tucker, this is a guy that came into the UFC with a lot of fanfare. He was Joe Rogan's guy for all of 20 seconds. And that came off his performance in his UFC debut. We happened to be there at the Metro Center in Halifax, Nova Scotia, way back in 2017. You had Travis Brown taking on Derek Lewis in the main event. Mario Yamasaki had other plans for poor Travis Brown in that one. But overall, Gavin Tucker won the night. I mean, this is a guy that a lot of people weren't familiar with. Overall, he was billed as being out of Newfoundland, representing Halifax with Titans MMA. There's always going to be a connection to TJ Grant there. Overall, in that performance, there was a little bit Fergie. There was a little bit Jesus. There was a little bit Dominic Cruz. There was a little bit Cody Garbrandt. And in his performance, Gavin Tucker looked absolutely amazing. He was stunting on Cecilia. He was pointing down to the floor. He was outboxing him. He looked amazing. And then in his next fight, Matt, what happened?
He got beat very badly by Rick Glenn. Now, if you're going to tell the full Gavin Tucker story, you do really have to dissect that performance against Sam Cecilia, because it is really hard to get Joe Rogan's recognition, and that it is worth a lot, especially in today's, sports entertainment society. And Gavin Tucker put on an absolute show against Cecilia. Very Cody Garbrandt-esque. He was stunting on him, like you had said, pointing his finger down to the ground, trying to get him to brawl like Max Holloway. It was a really impressive performance, and it was one of the performances that almost transcended just the fight itself. It was something that people were talking about really weeks after the fight was over, and they thought Gavin Tucker was a real contender at 145. Now, of course, he went on to fight Rick Glenn at UFC 215, and things didn't really go his way. He did start out the fight looking really good. He has really good movement and whatnot, and then he got dropped bad. And it was just one thing after another. The snowball effect kind of went on from there. And it is interesting, too, because you look at the guys who Gavin Tucker has had trouble with, the more power-oriented fighters. Billy Quarantillo, you look at him, he's not really a power puncher by any means, but he's a guy who can put together combinations and hurt you with single shots, and that's something Gavin Tucker really has to worry about in this fight.
And I mean, with Gavin Tucker, so he loses that Rick Glenn fight, and then he's out for an extended period of time. This is a guy coming into the UFC, already into his 30s, he's now 34, so is he still a prospect? You always have to ask that question. I mean, he's got 13 pro fights, but to this point so far in the UFC, only 4 of them, and he's 3-1 so far. The comeback win over Sungwoo Choi was a big one. That one also in Canada about a year and a half ago, a year and 4 months ago. Picks up the 3rd round win there. His output from the first to the 2nd round went up, and then in the 3rd round he gets a finish. And then in his last fight against Justin James, you had 2 very similar styles where we've seen out of Gavin Tucker that his wrestling's quite good. He definitely has good submission skills, and on the feet, he just throws one added X factor compared to Justin James, where I'm not so much a wrestle boxer. I'll open up that southpaw stance so I can accentuate that kick coming from the back. And he does have a really nice kick, and he can throw it at different ranges between his opponents, but he can throw it at different levels as well, which maybe you don't often see. You see the commentary always talking week in, week out. Boys, this guy or gal has a great calf kick. That's so good. But you don't hear them talking about the kick to the thigh, the kick to the knee, maybe one that's going up high. And we did see that a little bit in last weekend's main event with Jack Hermanson, where he was finding success with his kicks until he broke his foot and then he couldn't throw them anymore. But for Gavin Tucker, it's essential that if he's probably going to get a win, he definitely needs to start building up those kicks early.
Oh, without a doubt. I do think that is the key, especially when you look at Billy Quarantillo. He's a really high stance fighter. He will sort of have his chin up in the air. And if Gavin Tucker can, he does duck and throw looping shots. Now, he will throw really good combinations as well. You rarely will see just sort of that one fire. He'll kind of pitter-patter with 2 shots and then throw a really hard either hook or kick or whatever. And then that's the shot that he's looking to damage you with. I like the wrestling from Gavin Tucker too. He uses his own footwork quite well. And it is an offensive and a defensive tool. He can use it to sneak into range to then grab a quick or double leg. He can use it to evade his opponent. It's something you do have to worry about because he will overuse his movement sometimes to the point where he's just doing a lot extra that he doesn't really have to. It's a lot of wasted energy that he doesn't really have to put out, but it's something that does apply to his style. Billy Quarantillo, he's had a really weird UFC run because his biggest win is, of course, over Spike Carlyle, but Spike Carlyle, it's really weird to place him in the division. Is he, a future contender? Is he just an exciting fighter? We really don't know, but it was a nice performance from Quarantillo. He started off pretty weak in that fight. Spike Carlisle was landing big shots. He took him down multiple times. But Quarantillo, just as the fight progressed, you could tell it was just sort of that slow erosion away at Spike. He was able to really take advantage of his phenomenal cardio and just sort of put it on Carlisle down the stretch. And I thought that was a really important performance. The Kyle Nelson fight afterwards, I don't really think you can take much from that because it was a fairly one-sided fight from Quarantillo. You like the confidence that you see in that third round before the knockout, though, because he basically just walked across the cage with his hands down, threw one punch and knocked out Kyle Nelson. It was a very impressive performance.
Kyle Nelson kind of fights like Kimo Leopoldo when he walked to the cage. He almost walks like he doesn't necessarily have a cross on his back, but maybe just a sheet of plywood because he stands so damn square with his hands relatively low. I mean, if he does block, he does the Justin Gaethje, but he doesn't do it all that well. So Matt, now I have to bring in the prop. We get the Carlos Newton signed Canadian flag, and of course we have Gavin Tucker in this fight representing our region, really. I mean, we're out of New Brunswick. He's out of Nova Scotia by way of Newfoundland. Billy Quarantillo, though, and the reason why I bring that flag out, this is an interesting stat about him. He's 3-0 against Canadians, and if you look at his overall body of work, he's faced some decent Canadians so far. So you talk about his last win, it's over Kyle Nelson. When you look at his UFC body work, are there any other Canadians there? No, not necessarily. He does have a win over Adrian Valeka, who it just so happened that we interviewed him on this channel before that fight. We interviewed Valeka, didn't quite work out for him. And he also has a win over Matthew DiMarcantonio that we happen to cover one of his weirder fights in a main event for Fighting Alliance 7 Legends in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada at the old LBR. So shouts to all you Maritimers that know what I'm talking about. But either way, in this fight, Billy Quarantillo beats Canadians. He has good wrestling. He throws good combinations together. And I think he has a really underrated ground game. And maybe not so much because you get to see it in that Spike Carlisle fight. Because as that fight went on, the tide really started to go out for Carlisle after he really just put all of his energy into the end of the first round. And then after that, it was pretty well all Quarantillo for the rest of that fight. And in his UFC tenure, he gets that win over Camilla Kirk in his Dana White Contender Series bout a little over a year ago, almost a year and a half ago. In that fight, rallied, got a big finish in that one late. He beats Jacob Kilburn in their UFC debuts. Jacob Kilburn is not UFC level. Carlisle, and then Kyle Nelson. So for Billy Quarantillo, if we have a look at the odds, he opened up as a favorite at about a -140. Then the money came in on Tucker. Now it's just slightly in for Quarantillo. So it's going all over the place. For Gavin Tucker, open a +120. Then it was Pick'em. Now he's a slight underdog. The Tapology votes paint a totally different picture, Matt, because out of 794 total votes, 80% Quarantillo, and out of that 80%, 74% have him by decision. How do you see this one here?
So I don't see a finish for either guy. I think both guys have proven that they're more than durable throughout their UFC careers. I am siding with Billy Quarantillo, though. I like his cardio. I like his output a lot. I do worry a little bit about that extra movement of Gavin Tucker. If for Gavin Tucker to win this fight, though, he has to mix in his takedowns with his striking. He's a little Frankie Edgar-ish in that respect, where to really open up the full capacity of his striking game, he is going to have to rely a little bit on the feints, or at least the threat of the takedown. But I like Billy Quarantillo. I like a submission defense. I like a submission offense. I like the fact that he will damage his opponent even from his back. He's kind of Tony Ferguson-esque in that respect, where he's going to throw those elbows like Michael Bisping against GSP. I just like Quarantillo in this one.
And I mean, hey, will he continue on that Canadian streak and go 4-0 here? I don't know. But I look at Gavin Tucker and I look at the two losses, and I mean, en français, ça vaut la peine, because Billy Quarantillo looks a lot like Rick Glenn. He's got the goatee at most points, he's tall, he's lanky, and I mean, not that they fight incredibly similarly, but I'd like to see Billy Q in the PFL. We'd see what happens. Yeah. Who knows? Just like Rick Glenn, World Series champ. But in the fight that Glenn had against Gavin Tucker, it was an uppercut straight up the middle that dropped Tucker and really set off his problems. And you want to talk about that Rick Glenn fight. One of the judges scored at 30-24. I was surprised more of the judges didn't score it along those lines, because that was an absolute beatdown by Rick Glenn. It's a shame that we didn't get to see more of Rick Glenn, or we haven't seen more.
Yeah, it is. But again, Gavin Tucker, I think that fight showed that there's some susceptibilities, if you will, to his style, and I think Quarantillo could take advantage.
Same thing in the Justin James fight. That's the other thing that I wanted to say, because James dropped Tucker in the first round of their fight. Similar shot up the middle. Justin James not really known for shots up the middle. He's the looping shots, crashing forward. Now, he did crash into it, but it was up the middle. So for Billy Quarantillo, there's a lot of paths to victory. For Gavin Tucker, there certainly is as well. Again, southpaw, starts throwing those kicks early, mixing in the wrestling, trying to tire down Billy Quarantillo. Not necessarily worried about the gas tank, really either guy. So it should be a very entertaining fight. And Matt, if we didn't have Ferguson Oliveira up near the top, this would definitely be a contender for fight of the night.
Without a
I'm
doubt.
really looking forward to it. So again, the final pick here.
Oh, Billy Quarantillo. I think this is going to be a phenomenal fight. I think it's going to go all 3 rounds. It's going to be really back and forth, but I'm sticking with Billy Q.
Matt, I'm also going with Billy Quarantillo. Really looking forward to this card. We have a lot of great fights. I just mentioned Tony Ferguson taking on Charles Oliveira in the co-main event. And in the main event, it is for flyweight gold. Deiveson Figueiredo taking on the assassin, baby, Brandon Moreno. You're not going to want to miss that, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say,
Let's get into it.